Let's come on in and get our services started tonight. Looking forward to another great Bible study. Let's everybody stand if you would, please. And let's get started in our services. Leaning on the everlasting arms. What a fellowship, what a joy divine. Sing with me now. What a fellowship, what a joy divine, leaning on the everlasting arm. What a blessedness, what a peace in mind, leaning on the everlasting arm. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning on the everlasting arm. Let's sing them all on the second. Oh, how sweet to walk in this pilgrim way, leaning on the everlasting arm. Oh, how bright the path grows from day to day, leaning on the everlasting arm. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning on the everlasting arm. What have I to dread? What have I to fear? Leaning on the everlasting arm. I have blessed peace with my Lord so near, leaning on the everlasting arm. Leaning, safe and secure from all alarm. Leaning on the everlasting arms.
Now, last week I was smart enough to bring up an extra little space for me, and I didn't do it this week, so we'll see how this goes. It's good to see everyone here this evening, and hope you're having a good week, enjoying this nice weather as it's going to turn rainy tomorrow and over the next couple of days, but looking forward to that as well. Just going to briefly go through some announcements, and then we'll get into our notes. I do have the notes for you back there, and then you'll notice there's just on the prayer list, I did not have the formatted deal that Pastor normally passes out, so I just real quickly typed up the updates from what was added last week, and I just noticed there's a weird misprint on there, but okay. But we'll go over those here in a little bit tonight. This coming Sunday after the evening service, the youth have a snack activity planned, and so not quite sure what they're doing, but it usually involves food and some kind of game. And so youth make plans to be here for that. And then next Saturday, they also have a youth rally that will be down at Grace Baptist Church in Decatur from 10:30 to 2. And so if you have any questions about that, just see Brother David or Miss Katie about that. And then, of course, we're looking forward to our Resurrection Sunday services coming up and just a little bit different schedule for that day. We'll have a sunrise service at 7:30 in the morning, and then we'll have a breakfast fellowship after that. And we will get a sign-up sheet back there that should be there this Sunday where you can let us know that you're planning on being here for breakfast. And then after that, it'll be our normal morning schedule, so 9:30 Sunday school, 10:30 worship service, and then there'll be no evening service on that Sunday. And so we're looking forward to that. And then, of course, April's just around the corner, and we ought to have something on here. I think we should all just have one big church fellowship and watch the eclipse, right? That's the big thing coming up in April. And a lot of stuff surrounded that, but that is actually coming up very quickly. But in April, the youth have a scavenger hunt coming up. The ladies' banquet is coming up, and then the men's advance. And so make sure you mark your calendars for those things. If you haven't signed up for the men's advance, we need you to sign up for that. It's sign-up sheets back there on the back table. Let us know you're coming. I can't remember the prices for that, but I'll make sure we get that information to you if you need that. So, and now, last week, I said that these outlines probably would be pretty short, and then I went right up to prayer time, so I didn't have any issue. I'm not sure that will be the case this week. We may breeze through this one fairly quickly, but last week we talked about the gift of speaking in tongues, and then this week we're talking about the gift of healing. The gift of healing. I'm just going to be upfront and honest with you. This is not a gift I have much information about. It's not something that I have studied much. So whenever somebody says the gift of healing, I just have some of these kind of crazy videos that I've seen of these meetings where people are coming up and they're getting slain or hit in the head or something, and they fall down and they're miraculous. And that's always just seemed like a bunch of nonsense to me, so I just never really have paid a bunch of attention to that. But I guess it is something that we should consider in why we take the stance that we take, in that it is one of those gifts that was a legitimate spiritual gift that God gave, but it was also going to be one of those that was only temporary, in that it ceased. It's not really a gift that we look at today. And so we're just going to look at this real quickly, and you have your outline there tonight. Well, the first thing we want to say right up front is, obviously, even in this present day, God has the ability to physically heal anybody he wants to at any time he wants to, and he does. All of us could think of testimonies of people we know that as far as the world was concerned, they didn't have much hope, and then God came in and miraculously healed that person. And so we know that takes place. So really the question is the gift of healing. In other words, does God give that gift to us today to be able to heal another individual? And so if we're going to think about how this takes place, the first thing we need to do is really just consider if God was going to give somebody this gift of healing, then he would pattern it after Christ, because after all, Christ performed the most healing miracles out of anyone. And we're going to look at that some of that here tonight. But in Matthew chapter 4, verses 23 and 24, it says, "And Jesus went about Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing all manner of sickness and all manner of disease among the people. And his fame went throughout all Syria, and they brought unto him all sick people that were taken with divers diseases and torments, and those which were possessed with devils, and those which were lunatic, and those that had the palsy, and he healed them." And so we know there's several accounts throughout the Gospels of Christ healing people. In fact, there are at least 18 specific accounts of where Jesus heals somebody. And that's just the ones that are recorded. We know that he performed a lot more miracles than that. In fact, if you were to look at John chapter 1 and verse 25, it says, "And there are also many other things which Jesus did, the which if they should be written every one, I suppose that not even the world itself could not contain the books that should be written." And so it's just impossible for us to know just all that Christ actually did while he was here on this earth. But we can at least look at the way those miracles took place and kind of gather some insights about that. And now, these points, keep in mind, like I said, I could not come up here and tell you and explain to you how these healing movement works and how all the different facets of it. And really this outline kind of answers some of those. So just try to imagine what one of those type meetings would be like and why we're answering these the way that they are. But so number one said Christ healed people where he found them, right? Where he found them. No special meetings. In other words, Christ didn't hold a big tent meeting where you had to gain entrance into and somehow make your way to the front and through all the crowds of people. No, most of the time, it was right where he found them. In some cases, it wasn't even that he found them. It's somebody sent somebody else on their behalf to him, and he healed them that way. Like, he didn't even have to be present with them. And so completely different than you would think of one of these type meetings where that we've seen, where you not only do you have to be present in the building, but you got to somehow make your way to the front. Number 2, Christ healed all manner of sickness. There was no screening process. Now I said, remember, you've got to make it to the front. And a lot of those meetings, and I'm just going by what I've heard and what I've seen, but generally what happens is when they're having these type meetings, there are other men in there that will go throughout the crowd, and they handpick. They handpick the ones that they're going to take up there, and they go through their screening process of who is going to be allowed to come up there and be healed and all those things. But that wasn't the case with Christ. And then number 3, the healings they were complete. Once Christ healed somebody, they were healed. There wasn't any relapses or failures or anything like that. I mean, you were healed, and that was it. Number 4, Christ's healings were free of charge. You didn't have to give a big enough offering or buy a book or get one of those magic handkerchiefs sent to you, right? They were free of charge. Number 5, Christ generally healed without touching. In other words, there weren't these big theatrics. It wasn't, most of the time he just spoke the word. Now, there were some instances where he did something a little different, but he had a purpose in that, and he was showing something by that, but it still wasn't this big theatrical production and all that we see going on today. And then number 6, this is a little different, but it's certainly that we can see in the Bible, but he actually discouraged testimonies. He would often heal somebody and said, look, no, just keep it to yourself. Don't be spreading this all over the place. And of course, almost always those that were healed, they couldn't contain it. They had to go tell somebody. But Christ was trying to keep it, kind of on the down low, I guess you could say. Because, he knew what that was going to stir up among people. And so just, hey, calm it down a little bit. You got the verse there under number 6, Mark 7:36, it says, and he charged them that they should tell no man. But the more he charged them, so much the more a great deal they published it. Number 7 is an important note as well. Christ's healing ministry related to Israel. Why do you suppose that was? Yeah, it was a sign. It was a sign gift. Then number 8, many of those healed by Christ were unsaved or saved or were saved at the same time that they were healed. So kind of the opposite of, you would think about these healers and you would say, well, if you have this gift and you have this power to go heal, why aren't you down at the hospital and healing all these people? And the response you might get from one of them is, well, they just don't have enough faith. His healings weren't necessarily based on faith. In fact, the miracle of being healed is what generated faith in them a lot of times. And so that's not really an argument to be had. So we look at these from the standpoint of Christ, but then also the apostles themselves, they had the ability to heal from time to time. And really there's not a whole lot of accounts where they did that, but they certainly had the ability. One of those accounts was in Acts chapter 3, and I want to just go ahead and read through a good part of Acts chapter 3. We've got the time to do that, so but it's a good account here, if I can get there. So in Acts chapter 3, starting in verse 1, it says, now Peter and John went up together into the temple at the hour, being the 9th hour, and a certain lame man from his mother's womb was carried, whom they laid daily at the gate of the temple, which is called Beautiful, to ask alms of them that entered into the temple, who seeing Peter and John about to go into the temple asked an alms, and Peter, fastening his eyes upon him with John, said, Look on us. And he gave heed unto them, expecting to receive something of them. Then Peter said, Silver and gold have I none, but such as I have I give thee. In the name of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, rise up and walk. And he took him by the right hand and lifted him up, and immediately his feet and ankle bones received strength. And he, leaping up, stood and walked and entered with them into the temple, walking and leaping and praising God. And all the people saw him walking and praising God, and they knew that it was he which sat at alms at the beautiful gate of the temple, and they were filled with wonder and amazement at that which had happened unto him. And as the lame man which was healed held Peter and John, all the people ran together unto them in the porch that is called Solomon, greatly wondering. And when Peter saw it, he answered unto the people, Ye men of Israel, why marvel ye at this? Or why ye look so earnestly on us, as though by our own power or holiness we had made this man to walk? The God of Abraham and of Isaac and of Jacob, the God of our fathers, hath glorified his Son Jesus, whom you delivered up and denied him in the presence of Pilate when he was determined to let him go. But you denied the Holy One and the just, and desired a murderer to be granted unto you, and killed the Prince of Life, whom God hath raised from the dead, whereof we are witnesses. In his name, through faith in his name, hath made this man strong, whom you see and know, yea, the faith which is by him hath given him this perfect soundness in the presence of you all. And now, brethren, I wot not that through ignorance ye did it, and did also your rulers. But those things which God before had showed by the mouth of all his prophets, that Christ should suffer, he hath so fulfilled. Repent ye therefore, and be converted, that your sins may be blotted out, when the times of refreshing shall come from the presence of the Lord. And he shall send Jesus Christ, which before you was preached unto you, whom heaven must receive until the times of restitution of all things, which God hath spoken by the mouth of all his holy prophets since the world began. So again, we can see very similar points to the ones that we just looked at. Number one, the two apostles, they healed the man where he was at. Again, it didn't take a special meeting or anything like that. They were walking by, they saw the man, they were led of the Spirit to do that, and so they were given that ability. You notice number two, he did not come seeking to be healed. Number three, his healing was complete. And then probably the most two important points, number 4 and 5. Number 4 first, Peter and John did not claim any special power or ability. They completely gave the credit and the ability to God, right? We didn't do anything. God did this. Literally all Peter said was, told him to rise up and walk. It was the healing power of God that did it. And then as we mentioned a while ago, and it's also the next point in letter C, how that healing is one of the sign gifts, it was also accompanied by this, gospel preaching. And that's exactly what we just read. First, Peter heals this man, or God heals him through Peter's words, and it attracts the attention of other Jews there in the temple, and they're amazed at what's going on, and it leads it right to him preaching this message, basically giving them the gospel, and tells them right to their face, look, you guys crucified the one that you should have believed in. And he preaches the gospel to them. And it's one of those things, let's just go right into the next point, because these are kind of goes together. The sign gifts were to confirm or authenticate the message and the messenger. And so you see, even in this account, how that the sign, which was the healing of this man, authenticated the message that they had and enabled them to go right into the gospel message after they had witnessed something that was truly miraculous that could only come from God. But we go all the way back to Moses and how that God used sign gifts for him in order to authenticate his message. Remember, he said, well, they're not, if I go back to the children of Israel and tell them that God said this, they're not going to believe me. And what did God do? He gave them 3 different signs to be able to show them, to say, okay, this message is certainly coming from God. It's not coming from me, because those were only things that he could do with the power of God. Now, I skipped over the verse there in your outline. In Mark 16 and 17, it says, these signs shall follow them that believe in my name. Shall they cast out devils? Shall they speak with new tongues? They shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. And again, you see how that verse starts out. And these signs shall follow. So this was significant in that, again, that it authenticated the message and the messenger, but also back to the point that we made earlier, that this was something for the Jews. Not that Gentiles couldn't be healed, and not that God didn't heal Gentiles, but it was a sign for the Jews. Since healing was a sign gift, it was transitory and therefore not available for today. In other words, we do not have people that have the true gift of healing as is proclaimed in the Bible. Those guys that we see on TV are, what's the word? Charlatans. They're pretenders. They are doing it for the money. And that is, and unfortunately, that's exactly what is going on there. Letter D. This is I missed something here. Oh, that's interesting. It skips right to. That's because you don't have any blanks on letter D. Okay. So letter D, it says healing is not provided for in the atonement. There are some that will take this verse that you have right there in your outline, Isaiah 53:5, and misinterpret it and would say that because of the atonement, we have the gift of healing. But that's not what is being said here. So Isaiah 53:5 says, but he was wounded for our transgressions, he was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. Obviously, or it should be obvious to us, if you're studying the Bible correctly, this is a spiritual healing, not a physical one. It's a spiritual healing. So letter E, does God heal today? Well, letter E, God does heal today. But there were a number of examples that we can go to, even in the New Testament, where God chose not to heal. Number one, many great Christians were not healed. So we can go to the first example there, Paul. Paul was one that was not healed. And we can go over to, and it's in your outline there, but over in 2 Corinthians chapter 12, it says, for this thing I besought the Lord thrice, that it might depart from me. And he said unto me, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Paul had an infirmity, and it's one of those things that he did seek the Lord on multiple occasions for the Lord to remove that, and God said no. Nope, I'm not going to do it. And there's a lot of speculation about what that infirmity may have been. I personally, and this is just my opinion, so you can study it and decide what you want to decide. I personally think that he had vision problems. I think that he may have possibly been going blind, or at least greatly struggled with his vision. And the reason I say that is, remember how that Paul got saved. He saw the glory of God on the road to Damascus. He was blind for 3 days. His eyes actually were scabbed over because of the bright light. And you remember when Ananias went and put his hand on him, those did fall off. And so he wasn't completely blind, but I don't think he ever had his vision back the same way it was. And many times, he didn't even write his own epistles. Somebody had to write them down for him as he dictated to them. So that's my opinion. Like I said, the Bible doesn't reveal that to us, but that's what I think was. But he asked the Lord, Lord, will you please remove this from me? Because in his mind, he could serve God better if he didn't have this infirmity. And God said, nope, you can serve me better with this infirmity because my grace is sufficient for you. In letter B, you have Epaphroditus in Philippians chapter 2. It says, yet I supposed it necessary to send unto you Epaphroditus, my brother, and companion in labor, and fellow soldier, but your messenger, and he that ministered to my wants. For he longed after you all, and was full of heaviness, because that you had heard that he had been sick. For indeed he was sick, nigh unto death, but God had mercy on him, and not on him only, but also on me, lest I should have sorrow upon sorrow. I sent him therefore the more carefully, that when you see him again you may rejoice, and that I may be less sorrowful. Receive him therefore in the Lord with all gladness, and hold such in reputation, because for the work of Christ he was nigh unto death, not regarding his life, to supply your lack of service towards me. So you have this Epaphroditus, who was of a great help to Paul, but at one time he was very sick. The Bible says he was about almost to the point of death, and yet God spared his life and healed him. And so you have the Apostle Paul, who had an infirmity that if anybody was going to have the faith to be healed, we would think that it would be Apostle Paul, and God said, nope, I'm not going to do it. And then you have Epaphroditus, who would have labored, he would have worked to his own death, right? That's a testimony that we have here, and yet God had mercy on him and healed him. Then you think about Timothy, that's letter C. Timothy, he obviously had some kind of chronic illness, right? He had some kind of issue, and Paul gives him the advice, says, drink no longer water, but use a little wine for thy stomach's sake, and thine often infirmity. So he's had some kind of chronic illness that he was dealing with quite often. And then letter D, you have another man here, Trophimus. I don't know if I'm saying that right. But again, it's just another person that was left. They wanted to take him, they wanted to send him, but they couldn't because he was sick. And so what we have to gather when it comes to God healing now and today, what is it really up to? It's up to the will of God, right? And that's what we have to trust. We just have to pray, and we should pray, and we do that every Wednesday night. We'll do that here in a few minutes. We'll list out prayer requests for people that have, and think about it, the majority of the prayer requests we have something to do with health. That's what it generally has to do with, and some of those we see great praises, and then some of those we don't, at least not in the sense that they were healed. And it's all just up to the will of God, and that's where we just have to put our faith and trust in the Lord and know that if it's His will, He'll do it. If it's not His will, we still trust Him through it. And that's not always the easiest thing to do, but that's what we have to do. So I told you this one would be pretty short tonight. So we're already done with that outline. Now I got ahead of myself, and I was going to just give you an update on Pastor and what's been going on over there. And of course, he's still got about another week over there. He comes back, I believe, next Tuesday, and then the Duttons will be back. They'll be there for a full another week, I believe. But Pastor will be back this coming Tuesday. And last night, I believe it was last night. You know, the time change and everything gets all messed up. But I know he got to speak at the bishop's church there, and I know he also got to speak to the seventh graders at a public school there in the Philippines. Which it's like, what, you got to do that in a public school? Yeah, he got to speak to a bunch of seventh graders there in a public school. Said that was an amazing time. Right now, probably as we speak, just with the time change, he's probably in the middle of a men's fellowship. He's I believe speaking to about 40 different preachers right now. And so just having a good time over there. And there's a couple other things coming up, but I can't remember what she told me. But anyways, so just continue to pray for Pastor as he's over there and being a blessing and being blessed at the same time. And I know one of the things that was mentioned is how in June when they come on furlough, Heath is going to come here and he's staying and is going to be working towards getting a job and all those things. And that's going to be difficult for the bishops because he's a vital part of their ministry, and he does a lot of the stuff around there for their ministry, and he speaks the language a lot more fluent than Brother Dwight or Miss Renee do, and so he's just really picked it up and done a good job with it. And so it will certainly be a challenge for them when he returns to the States and stays here. So that ought to be a matter of prayer. But just wanted to give you that update. The Duttons, as far as I know, they're all doing well except for, I think they said Danica. One of them is like apparently something about the mosquitoes over there she is highly allergic to, and her face is just swelling up. And they're also dealing with the heat. And so they have one of them has, it may be the same one. She said it, and one ear out the other. Anyways, one of them was dealing with a heat rash as well, and so they're taking parts of it a little rough, but just to continue to pray for them because they'll be there for, like I said, for a full week after Pastor returns. So, but all right, well, we got plenty of time, but we're going to go ahead and have a word of prayer, and then we'll get into